Alright, welcome back to theZim's video journal. I'm theZim, and this is my video journal where I talk about everything that went down in my musical and artistic journey over the last week. Thanks for joining. This one might go over my 10-minute limit, but we'll see. I got a lot of things to talk about. First off is I'm going to start with, I've been asking for the last 2 weeks what your favorite band, local band is, wherever you are. Let me know. So far I've gotten no response, so I know people are watching this, so why aren't you responding? Just in anywhere in the comments of any place you're seeing this, either on YouTube or on Facebook or on Twitter, go ahead and just comment in who your favorite local band is. I'd love to hear who it is. I'd love to check it out, research, and find out if it's different than some of my favorite local bands. And my two favorite local bands right now are Ever So Android and Kimo Muraki. So if you check them out, and I would like to check out your favorite local band, so be sure to post in the comments who it is so I can check it out. And local to where you are, it doesn't have to be Seattle. I happen to be in Seattle. It can be local to wherever you are. Just let me know where you are and then the band name. So do that. Thanks a lot. I was really looking forward to recapping the show at Nectar. We played, theZim and Arock played on November 8th. December 8th. Right? Was it December 8th? Yeah, it was December 8th. Man, it was just this last Tuesday. And as far as the theZim and Arock set is concerned, it was pretty much off the hook. It was amazing. It was probably the most comfortable I've been on stage ever, really, to be honest. There are a couple factors that probably play into it. Earlier in the day, I took one of my anti-anxiety medications, and that helped get through the day. but it usually tapers off by after a while of using it. But it was probably still in my system a bit. But then also, we're just so, we've been playing the same set for a while now, and we're just so tight on that set and so comfortable. It's like thinking about what we're playing didn't matter. It was like I could just play with the intensity and the way I like to play, which is I'd like to play hard, and I like to just go give it my all and leave it on the stage as much as possible every time. And the less I have to think about the technical aspect of it, and I can just get into the music, the better off I feel. And basically one of my things I say is, like, if I don't feel like I've done my job if I don't break a sweat, and I was sweating good by the end of the set, and it was really fun. I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed our set. I enjoyed being on stage. Oh, I want to mention the last band that played that night, Wookie. I really enjoyed their set, so check them out. Wookie, Wooky, local band. I guess they rehearse out of Ballard. I'm going to try to get them on the podcast, but they were really cool, so check that out. And we got a lot of great feedback from people, mostly the other bands. Got some people bobbing their heads, but the struggle is real trying to get people to come to shows. Some of our friends came out, which I'm very thankful for. They know who they are, so that was awesome. Glad to see them, but just trying to figure out what I need to do now to build off of that and keep people coming out. So there's that show recap. It was awesome. Really excited. One of the things that my focus for the next year is basically to record again, and it's really hard to schedule shows, to practice for shows, to work on recording, do all that stuff, and it's kind of a bummer to stop any show momentum in a way to record. But Arock made a comment like, Alec, Zim doesn't want to play any shows, but it's like, and then I've also been kind of jaded about playing shows in Seattle and stuff, and it's really hard to not want to do it again off of a show that was that good, that felt that good. And it's just interesting. It's an interesting struggle to deal with, and trying to balance it all out with having to do the day job and all that stuff. So there's that. In general, this week was a really good week for me musically and artistically. And another thing that I did this week was I did this kind of like, they were billing as kind of like a singer-songwriter industry night at 88 Keys. I've never been downtown. Really disappointed about how much it costs to park. That was kind of a bummer. Put that in the hat of all the things that it costs to be an independent artist, and that whole idea of hopefully making money off your art, but then all the little things that make it hard to do that. And one of those things is parking downtown. It's just ridiculous how much it costs when you don't have a lot of money to spread around and that kind of thing. So there's just that. But the night was pretty cool. It was interesting. There was a handful of really good musicians that played like this singer-songwriter type thing. Like a couple to mention was like St. John and the Revelations. It was just St. John. He was kind of the host. He's really good. Tobias the Owl, first time I ever heard him in person, but I've heard a lot about him, so that was really cool. Those are the two that. Oh, and Glenn Cannon from Windowpane played. I'm getting to know that guy. I've ran into him a few times now. Really cool guy. I'll get him on the podcast as well. But so there was like a couple people that were kind of in the circles I've been running that I ran into again at that show. So that was cool. But the thing that really stood out for me, like I was really nervous about it at first. It was just 2 songs. It was kind of, they set it up like an open mic. But it was like an open mic for people that are in the scene and doing things, kind of. Like originally I thought it was like an open mic for open mic hosts, but not many people pitched their open mic, so I don't know how it all played out. But that's why I found out about it, because when I was hosting the Substation open mic, I learned about it and then just kind of got on it. But now I'm not doing that anymore. But I wanted to kind of pitch my podcast. I wanted to get more awareness of my podcast to the people that were there, and I was really nervous about it because I was gonna try to go into like a sales pitchy kind of vibe with it, and just going up and playing some songs and just kind of not having any agenda is really easy for me, just doing that. But having an agenda, it was kind of hard, and it didn't play out any way how I expected it to. Like I was gonna, my expectation in my head, which I'm learning to never do as little as possible, but the expectation in my head was that I was going to pitch the podcast for a few minutes and just talk about it and play one song and get off the stage, because it was only like you only had 10 minutes to do something. So, but I realized, I just wasn't warmed up to it. So I just mentioned the podcast and then kind of just talked for a second about just being nervous, essentially. And then I played a song, and that calmed me down a lot, just playing the song and looking around and getting into it. And then as I was playing the song, I kind of realized what I wanted to say, and I basically told a story of the podcast. Like one of the stories of the podcast was the reason I started it, with being frustrated with not feeling like I was getting the opportunities to play good shows, and the relationships of bookers and bands, and then I rolled that into the idea that I've probably mentioned to you before, how I'm learning that that it's been hard to get music venue owners on the show, on the podcast. They seem very reserved about it, whereas musicians are pretty open to it for the most part, because it's there's a difference in the types of people, which I'm realizing. The musicians are kind of in a lot of ways willing to sell themselves, even if they're shy. They're still willing to kind of do that more so than somebody like a venue owner, because a venue owner doesn't want the spotlight, it seems like. And just in the fact that there's such a dynamic difference in the personality types, I believe plays a part in the reasons why there's not a better understanding and communication between building better shows between the two parties. It just seems to make sense to me that, extremely different personalities, and there's like just not a lot of communication going on about what would be better to make better shows for the scene and help it thrive more. It's like, no wonder, and so hopefully Word on the Street can be a conduit to start that conversation more and get more awareness on the fact that, there's something wrong here in a lot of ways with how shows are being put together, what the expectations are, and who's responsible for them all. This last week, one of the things that came up for me as well is this idea of promotion for shows. It's like, it's pretty clear that venues do a minimum amount of promotion. That's all they really need to do. They put it in the ads. They make sure it's on like the Stranger ads. They do that ads for that, and I think maybe a lot of them will make sure it's on like the KXP calendar, and they put up, they'll pay for, some of them will pay for handbills and posters getting made. But then it's on the bands to do the rest. But I don't think bands realize that. I think bands sit on their hands too much about it. And I'm realizing too that a lot of bands don't realize what they don't realize. It's honestly really frustrating for me, because I'm so proactive about trying to figure out what I need to do to create more excitement for the scene in my band and my projects. And when I'm put on a lineup with other bands that seem so out of touch with any kind of motivation, that's where I get frustrated. And that's what and there's so many bands in the city that seem to be on that level of just kind of have this tunnel vision aspect to how they work in the scene. It's like, like I've said before, I feel like a lot of bands and a lot of people in the scene think support means a pat on the back and saying, hey, good set, or hey, good job. And it's like, that's not support. Support is actually putting your neck out there and championing other parts of the scene, which I'm clearly trying to do with the podcast and with and if you're familiar with me on Facebook, I do that constantly. But it's a hard conversation, because it's like, a lot of people just don't realize what they're missing, especially now with it's hard to get people out to shows. We're fighting the internet. We're fighting a lot of that. We're fighting Netflix and other things, that all the entertainments that's given to you online. It's like, how do you draw people out? How do you get people excited to go out on a weekday, and fill a venue on a weekday, and for something that's not been promoted through The Stranger or not been promoted through KXP? Where's the everyday? There's so much music in the city. Maybe there's this conversation about oversaturation, but I don't believe that's a problem. I believe the problem is not enough people are just coming out to see all this music. So, and how to create that's the question. That's what I'm trying to do. There's that. So that's like kind of what it snowballed into with the internet. But what I wanted to mention about that, when I was on stage, so I got on my little soapbox like I just did now. It wasn't quite as long, not nearly as long as what I just said, but I got on my soapbox and kind of got excited about things. But I got applause for what I had to say, which is something that's never happened to me before. I've never said something, purely just said something, and then people clapped for me for it. Singing a song or something, yeah, it kind of comes with the territory. You stop a song and people will just clap automatically, whether they liked it or not. But to get a genuine response from people from what I'm just saying, that was an interesting thing. So that was actually really cool for me. I felt kind of high off of that for a moment. So, and I, obviously wanted to continue. And I think I've, at least one or two people are now, aware of the podcast and are seeking it out. I got a message on Facebook from somebody I didn't talk to or know based on that experience. That was really cool. And then like another person, Michael Knapp, who I've been talking to through the internet about the podcast, and he's been listening to for a while. He was at the show. He's also a local musician, and he came up to me and said, hey man, just want to introduce himself, because he's been listening to the podcast, which was really rad, which I really value the interactions. I value them in person, and I also value them highly online interactions. So if you want to interact with the podcast or with me, do it online, because that's what helps make other people aware of what's going on. The more interactions, the more you're sharing, the more you're talking to me online, the greater it will help all these things I'm trying to do. And the things I'm trying to do are to help the scene. So you'd be helping the scene in general. So I'll just leave all that. While we're talking about the podcast, the last week's podcast was with Dave Larson, which was really rad. And again, another section of the scene, kind of talked about, the punk and hardcore scene, got in depth about what it means to be straight edge, which I consider myself straight edge, but there's listen to the podcast and you'll find out what I'm talking about. It was really cool. He has his own podcast called, I've Known You Too Long, off the Nobody Knows podcast network that he's starting. So be sure to check all that stuff out. Check out the podcast. It was really cool. It was really one of my favorites. And Michael, that came up to me at the show, he said that was one of his favorites, probably his most favorite that he's heard so far. So that was awesome. And like I've said before, I have a whole bunch in the can. I've recorded 3 more podcasts this week. So I have, I think, 8 in the can. And my rule I'm made up for myself is that I won't let them get older than 2 months old. So at this point, I'm not scheduling any more, podcast recordings until after the new year, and then I'll get on it again. But I'm good for the next 2 months, so that's really rad, just to kind of relax on that. So that is that. And the last thing I wanted to mention, I'm continuing through the Seahawks season. I'm doing, after every Seahawks game, I'm doing a promotional deal for my Alexander Thomas clutch, which are these. I make them by hand, by myself. Inside is silk. I got a pocket on the inside. The outside is made with denim, and I silk screen them. It's all DIY, all self-made, all done by myself. I have a couple different kinds. I have like an all-black one with my Alexander Thomas logo thing on the front in black ink as well, silk screened on there. This one in particular, this is a black 12 one, which is a special edition. I'm only making 12 of these black ones, but I have them also in blue with white and then also green printing on it, which are the kind of normal price. This one's a little more expensive, but I do a discount after every Seahawks game, and the Seahawks scored 35 points this week against the Ravens, and so the discount is $35 off. So that makes it, it's normally 120. What is that? Minus 35. So that's like, I'm really terrible at mental math, but it's, 90, I think it's $95, right? Is that right? Anyways, so $95 for a clutch, all handmade, full lifetime warranty. If there's ever a problem, send it back and I'll send you a new one. And it's, quality, straight up quality. You don't get better quality than this. And look at that stitching. Look at that stitching. Look at that stuff. I mean, look at it. Got a little clippy clip. Got and got the silk like I mentioned before. So it's well worth it. It's you'd be supporting local artists, and if you buy these things, you're helping everything I'm doing. The podcast, everything just makes more money flowing through this whole place. Makes everything a lot easier. So I'd love your support. They're all made to order. So if you want one for a gift, place your order and we'll get it out to you as soon as I can. Made to order and done in the order. I make them in the order they were received. So love your support on that. Alexander Thomas, you can get them all. The link's always in the description of this video on YouTube, but it's Alexander Thomas 2015 on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Alexander Thomas 2015, and then also on Instagram, Alexander Thomas 2015 is the handle on Instagram. I don't have an official website yet because I just haven't made enough money off of them to buy a website, but I hope I can get your support for them. So thanks a lot for watching. This is theZim's Video Journal, episode 83. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.